Let me tell you about ProHealthConnect.com. It's transforming healthcare payments, providing retailers a seamless process for over-the-counter and healthy benefit programs. By connecting retailers, health plans, and payment processors, ProHealth Connect creates one powerful, unified network. They empower independent grocers and pharmacies to accept health benefit cards without changing how they do business. With over 10,000 locations nationwide, helping more than 1.3 million people access the care and nutrition they need. Go to ProHealthConnect.com.
Excuse me! Taxi!
Come on, what are you doing? This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Joining us now is Tommy Pigott. He is State Department spokesperson. Tommy, talk about where things go from here and the word on the president's address to the nation last night.
Well, look, I think what we saw from the president yesterday was a powerful speech that outlined how we got here, the clear objectives of this operation, and the path forward. I think it was a clear explanation of the fact that leading up to this operation, the president had given the Iranian regime many options for diplomacy. We saw diplomacy before Operation Midnight Hammer, then we saw Operation Midnight Hammer, and then diplomacy was tried again after Operation Midnight Hammer, and yet we saw the Iranian regime continue in their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. And that is an intolerable threat, both to the United States and to the entire world. So the president being very clear on the objectives here, it was a powerful speech outlining how we got here, and I think outlined a clear rationale for why he's taking the actions necessary to make America and the world safer for people living now, of course, but also for future generations.
Ed Cox.
So Tommy, there's 4 days to April 6th. April 6th is the deadline. Is the taking out the bridge a succession of things saying, look, I'm serious, I mean April 6th, and either we talk and come to a good conclusion or not?
Well, look, I think ultimately this goes back to the president outlining those clear objectives. We have seen the president say that we have destroyed their Air Force, we've destroyed their Navy, we've destroyed much of their missile capability. We've seen the targeting of their military-industrial complex as well, as the secretary has described. So clear objectives here that this operation is currently accomplishing in decisive manner. And so that's the clarity of purpose we have here from President Trump. And of course, underlying all of this is that idea, that truth that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, that intolerable threat that would have facing the entire world should that have come to pass. So the president outlining these clear objectives, he's also been clear that we are going to achieve those objectives. Of course, he prefers diplomacy, as I just was outlining, in terms of all the options for diplomacy that the Iranian regime has been given leading up to this. But the president was very straightforward yesterday, saying we are going to see these objectives accomplished.
And he does have the date of April 6th where he was going to be taking out the power grid, but this is leading up to that, saying, and I mean it.
Well, President Trump means what he says. That has been a consistent theme here from really his entire life, but I think it's been borne out again and again through his administration and as he's been president. He always puts America first in terms of our national interests. He always puts America first in terms of making America a safer place, and this is an important part of that. So the president, again, outlining those clear objectives, talking about the decisive progress we've made towards achieving those objectives, saying we're going to achieve those objectives. And I can't stress enough, again, the fact that he prefers diplomacy and he gave options for diplomacy here, but we still saw the Iranian regime pursuing that nuclear weapon. And what we've seen since this operation began from the Iranian regime is the indiscriminate targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure in countries that were not a party to this operation. That only underscores, as the president said, the point he is making, that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon, the threat that posed to the entire world.
And that justifies taking out infrastructure that could give them the ability, either with missiles or building drones or the nuclear power. Isn't that right?
Well, again, the objectives here from the president: destroying their Air Force, destroying their Navy, destroying their missile capability, the military-industrial complex. The secretary has also described how this is Iran right now with a certain level of ballistic missiles, conventional weaponry, that they were continuing to build upon. So if you look projecting a month, 2 months, a year into the future, I mean, it only gets worse from there. There was an imminent threat that was faced by the United States, our interests, our troops, allies in the region, the president taking action, the clear objectives of this operation being outlined. The president has also, despite what you might be hearing in the media, been crystal clear on this from the beginning. These are the objectives that the president has actually been talking about for a very long time, tried to address through diplomacy, and has continued to stress. The president, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, my boss, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, have all been talking about this. So the media's idea of saying that there hasn't been a clear objective here could not be farther from the truth. The clear objectives have been said again and again and again, and to underline it all, that reality that the Iranian regime, could never have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and he made a very good point, too, of also saying, look, the other presidents, it was all talk. I'm really helping for generations to come. By the way, this is just coming in here, Tommy.
Breaking news, WABC.
That Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has apparently asked the Army's top uniformed officer, it's the Chief of Staff, Randy George, General Randy George, to step down, that there's sort of some changes within the Iran structure. Have you heard anything? Is there anything you want to say on that?
Well, look, I defer to the Department of War to speak about staffing and other things. We'll stay focused on my portfolio here. But again, this entire administration working lockstep to implement the president's vision. The president here is the determiner of foreign policy. We're implementing that foreign policy across this administration, and America is a safer place because of it.
By the way, Tommy, I thought also one of the most powerful lines last night in the speech by President Trump was when he said, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open. And I'm encouraging you that need the Strait of Hormuz, i.e. Europe and other folks there in Asia, to, quote, find the courage to step up. I know that's under the State Department purview. How important is that? I mean, it really has been, I'll say to you, it's been really disappointing to me. And I think many Americans that many of our allies have not done more. I mean, it's incredibly courageous of President Trump to do this path. And he's like, we're going to do this. We're going to change the course of history with you or without you. But it sure would be nice for UK and France and others to be coming to our aid.
Yeah, a couple points here I think that are important in terms of context. The first, which I think is often not reported by the mainstream media, is the efforts President Trump has had to unleash American energy. As he said in his speech, countries can buy oil from us. We have immensely high oil reserves that we've been actually pursuing, and other energy that has been unleashed under President Trump. That's an incredibly important part of this, one important point. I think the second is, President Trump making this point yesterday, that we have seen, because of the actions that President Trump has taken, the decimation of the Iranian Air Force, their Navy, their missile capability, those efforts that we've seen from our brave men and women that are taking this action. So he was making that point that it's time for allies to step up. We don't get much of our oil through the Strait of Hormuz, but other countries do. And so it's important to see that stepping up. And I think the third point would want to stress is having these hard conversations when it comes to our allies is how we make alliances stronger. It's actually how we address threats. Think back to President Trump talking to NATO allies saying that you need to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP. That's how this alliance will be better. President Trump is asking legitimate questions, raising incredibly legitimate points about what this alliance structure, what an alliance should look like to address the challenges of the 21st century. And you don't solve those problems. You don't make anyone in the world safer, especially the United States, by sticking your head in the sand and ignoring those problems. No, President Trump is going to have these conversations, ask these incredibly important questions, and really make sure we are in the best position possible to address the threats and challenges that we face in the 21st century.
Tommy Pigott, last question is John Katsimatidis. Some of our neighbors in Europe, France, UK, even today was Austria turning their backs on us. I mean, what's the State Department's position?
Well, look, we're continuing to have conversations with countries across the world about what's going on in the Middle East, about what's going on elsewhere. We're going to continue that diplomatic work. But President Trump making this compelling case for why this action was necessary, why this operation was necessary, why it's making the world a safer place. We're going to continue to have these hard conversations, ask those important questions, make sure that America's interests are pursued. And honestly, when America's interests are pursued, when America's interests are advanced, the entire world is a safer place. That is borne out by history. And so President Trump makes no apology for putting America first.
We saved Europe's behind for many, many times in World War II and World War I. they have a bad memory.
Well, I think ultimately, look, President Trump making this case, President Trump making the case of why this is necessary. We're continuing to make that case. President Trump making no apology, like I said, for putting America first, advancing our national interests, and fundamentally, like I said, when we put America first, when America advances our national interests, the world is a safer place. That is borne out by history. So President Trump making no apology for putting America first, making the world a safer place through his actions. That's what he's focused on, the American people.
Yeah, no question. And thank goodness he had the courage to do it. I say bravo, big time. Tommy Pigott, thank you very much. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We love having you, Tommy. Thanks so much.
Listen to this podcast now
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.